Boldwood presents The Perfect Mother, written by Claire Allan and read by Ali Croker. Prologue, December 2023. There's been an incident with Tilly, the woman on the other end of the line says. Mel feels the breath leave her body. Through the ringing in her ears, she hears the quick follow-up of, "She's fine, she's not hurt, but we thought it best to let you know, given everything." So much is implied in those words. Given everything. Mel feels blame settle on her shoulders. She feels as if the soft-voiced woman she is now speaking to is joining the long list of people who look at her with judgment, who tilt their heads with mock sympathy and an unsaid, "Well, you have to expect such things will happen now." Given everything. "What's happened?" Mel snaps, 100 different scenarios, none of them good, racing through her mind. "What do you mean by incident?" "There was a lady at the fence. She was calling to Tilly, using her name. She didn't gain access to her site. Tilly was perfectly safe. One of our staff spotted her talking to the woman and intervened." Without needing to hear any further details or watch the CCTV the nursery offers to show her, Mel knows who the woman is. She knows that when she asks, 3-year-old Tilly will tell her it was Alice. It is always Alice. It has been for months now. She has been chipping away at everything important to Mel, breaking her life down bit by bit by bit. But this is different. The thought of her getting close to Tilly makes Mel's blood run cold. Immediately, she knows that this escalation of behaviour means she can never, ever send her child back to that nursery. Or any nursery in Carrickfergus, the town on the banks of Belfast Lough where she was born and raised. The town she's always thought she'd live in her entire life. The town that no longer feels like a safe home. Over the course of the last 8 months, her feelings of belonging have been stripped away. Her very sense of identity flayed from her in excruciating strips. The life she wanted, the life she'd thought she had sewn up, has been taken from her. Her job, her business, her reputation. Her ability to walk down the street without whispers and examining looks. Her self-belief annihilated in the process. Rumours spread like wildfire, each crazier than the last. Versions of her life and what happened have been invented and reinvented and spread like the gospel to anyone with ears or a functioning Wi-Fi connection. She'd hoped if she just kept her head down, the rawness of what had happened would pass. Alice would come to accept the truth. Mel is not to blame. But this incident? No, this is not something Mel can ignore in the hope it will just go away. She is scared now, terrified even. Turning up at Tilly's daycare like that. It's a message to her that Alice can get close to her beautiful girl whenever she wants, and there is nothing Mel can do about it. It's a message that Alice is unravelling further, becoming increasingly unhinged. And God only knows how she will react when she learns about the baby. The tiny little person growing in Mel's womb. This tiny person, currently no bigger than a lime, according to the diagram Mel has pinned to the wall of the room that had been her home office. Almost 6 centimetres and just forming fingernails and bones. Something so precious to Mel, but which will feel horribly cruel and unfair to Alice. Mel isn't showing yet and has kept the news quiet. Her parents and Ed's sister Emma being the only people who know, apart from medical professionals. They haven't even told Tilly she is going to be a big sister. Mel dreads the news becoming public, dreads the reactions of strangers, the way it will inevitably set tongues wagging again. What will it drive Alice to do next? "Play it cool," Ed tells her before she leaves to pick Tilly up and have a proper chat with the nursery staff. "You don't want to scare Tilly." "Maybe I do," Mel cries. Maybe I want her to know it's not only strangers you need to stay away from. Maybe I need her to know that people we thought were friends aren't always safe. She doesn't really want her child to be scared, but she has to think of a way to let a 3-year-old know that Alice, who has made hot chocolate with her and put her hair in soft curls, is no longer her friend and never will be again. That she is now one of the baddies. "She wanted me to go with her," Tilly says, sitting on the swivel chair in the nursery office, swinging her legs as her eyes dart all around the room, taking in the sights of the space that is normally out of bounds for the children. Tilly is drinking in every detail. She seems completely unfazed by her chance meeting with Alice at the fence. Mel has to remind her to focus instead on the questions she is being asked. "She said she was going to take me as a surprise to see you and Daddy," Tilly says. "But Miss Rachel said I had to come back inside for story time. Mummy, Alice looked all messy. I think she might have a wee bug or something." Mel nods, forcing a few words of agreement and reassurance out of her mouth before Miss Rachel tells Tilly she can have 5 more minutes at the sand tray. Not one to ever turn down the opportunity to play with sand, Tilly doesn't need telling twice. She hops off the seat and runs out of the room to start playing. "I didn't speak to her myself," Miss Rachel says. "When I called Tilly back, she left pretty quickly. We normally don't let the children play on the grass by the fence." "So where were you? Or the other staff? How did she get over there without anyone spotting her?" Mel asks as she digs her nails into the palms of her hands inside her pockets. It's the only way she can stop herself from screaming. Miss Rachel blushes, her already toned and bronzed face taking on a distinctly pink glow. "We were there in the play area too. Tilly wouldn't have been more than a couple of metres from us at any stage, but, you know, we have 20 children in her group, and as much as we try, we can't have eyes on them all at all times." "But you should," Mel snaps, the crack in her voice too harsh, too obvious to try and hide. She knows the nursery is a good nursery. She knows their safety policies are watertight. She knows Tilly is safe and well. For now. But she can't shake the dread in the pit of her stomach. Alice is becoming increasingly unpredictable. She isn't stable, and clearly she is nowhere near done with blaming Mel. Mel could go to the police, she supposes, but she can't bring herself to set the cops on a grieving woman. Once news like that got out, and it would get out in a town as small as Carrickfergus, it would only give people another reason to paint her as the villain of the piece. It would just feed the narrative Alice has been painting to every single person who will listen. No. She has to take drastic action, she thinks as she drives home. She has had enough. Chapter 1. March 2024. 33 weeks and 5 days. It doesn't feel like home yet, but she didn't expect that it would. Not when it is little more than a building site. Their belongings are split between a storage unit, the front room of this decaying farmhouse, and boxes scattered in the rooms they are using as temporary accommodation until a mobile home arrives to house them during the renovation. They'd originally hoped to be able to work and live around the building works they have planned for their new home, but just a couple of nights shared with the dust, spiders, dodgy pipes and rotted floorboards of this once beautiful home had put paid to that notion. When the builders started trudging through in muddy boots before lifting flooring in the unused rooms and drilling into decades-old plaster, the decision was made. Now, 2 weeks later, they are just waiting for the second-hand mobile home to arrive, be wired up and plumbed to allow them to move in, so the builders can carry on at pace with their work. The house has potential. Bags of it. Mel can picture it all now. A perfect mix of period features and mod cons. It will be beautiful, warm and cosy, surrounded by wildflowers and hedgerows, all with the soundtrack of birds in the trees and the bleating of sheep in the nearby fields. It will be an idyllic location to raise their 2 children. Tilly, now 4, has already decided that this is the bestest house she has ever seen in her whole life. Her inquisitive nature has had her sneaking into rooms with peeling wallpaper, cracked plaster, and mould creeping around the window frames. Mel needs eyes on the back of her head to stop Tilly disappearing altogether into a discarded box or the unused outbuildings to the rear of the yard. Her imagination is already running wild, and Mel finds it's a joy to watch her explore her new surroundings. The fear that her daughter could disappear one day and simply not come back has not left, however. Not even now. Ed has done, and continues to do, his very best to reassure her that they are all safe here. 2 weeks ago they packed their belongings into a lorry and shipped their lives to this idyllic fixer-upper just outside of Derry. It's just over 80 miles from Carrickfergus. 80 miles from the awful, ever-present fear and sadness. 80 miles from fearing the judgmental look she expects every time she leaves the house. 80 miles from Alice. Mel's life had become very small in Carrickfergus, and so had Tilly's. No carefree strolls around the marina. No lunches out or coffees in quiet cafes. She didn't want to be visible anymore. She couldn't take the chance she may bump into Alice or any one of the scores of people who believed her version of what had happened, as if it were the gospel truth. Alice had been prolific in her campaign to derail Mel's life. She posted all over social media and in parenting forums about her deep regret at choosing a doula like Mel, and how she had thought her birth would be safe in Mel's hands. Mel, she said, had failed to read warning signs in pregnancy or notice when things were going wrong, despite her claims she was a birthing expert. That this was a complete misrepresentation of what had happened didn't seem to matter to Alice. All she seemed to be interested in was some distorted form of justice or revenge. Mel's hypnobirthing classes, which had once had a waiting list, emptied over the course of a few weeks. The interview Alice did with a local newspaper, in which she urged mothers to avoid alternative approaches to birth, had been the final nail in the coffin. Even though there was no way, in any reality, that hypnobirthing had contributed to Jacob's death. Perhaps, inevitably, the story was picked up by a national newspaper, prompting phone-ins on morning radio and TV shows about alternative approaches to healthcare and the state of the NHS. Mothers were warned by hysterical talking heads of the risks they were putting their children under. No one asked Mel to talk on air. Not that she would have agreed anyway. She knew people believed Alice. People love a good tragedy, a good bit of gossip. They love to spread half-truths, then sit back and watch as they disseminate into the world, twisting and morphing as they go. She started to hear versions of what had happened that were so detached from reality as to make them almost laughable. Except no one was laughing, least of all Mel. The day she'd got the phone call from Tilly's daycare had been the last straw. Mel had told Ed, her beloved, supportive Ed, that she wanted to move. Not only away from their current home, but away from Carrickfergus altogether. Ed had been delighted at her suggestion, hoping she would finally agree to shipping them all to Australia, where his twin sister Emma and her family have built a perfect life for themselves. His parents both dead, Emma is the only member of his immediate family still living, and Mel knows he misses her desperately. But as much as Mel knows how Ed longs to be close to his twin again, she can't bear the thought of leaving her ageing parents and being so far from them. It's selfish, maybe, but she knows that if his parents were still alive, he would want to be close to them too. This house, complete with its list of projects 1.5 miles long, had been their compromise. Ed, tired of transforming other people's homes, was desperate for his own project. So they'd found this house, complete with an outbuilding large enough to be converted into an office space for Ed and his construction project manager business. And this house does hold a certain appeal beyond that, Mel thinks, as she lies awake watching dawn break through the crack in the threadbare curtains. She can definitely see it as being their forever home, where they can not only heal from their past experiences, but also grow, maybe even start to embrace life again. The nightmares didn't come last night. That's a positive. But neither did a decent amount of sleep. Each unfamiliar creak and groan of their new home had her extra vigilant. She's annoyed at herself for letting it get to her still. Things are meant to be easier here. She dare not tell Ed how she feels, not when he's still snorting that she didn't go for his Australian dream. Yes, this house is a compromise, but she can't help but feel it's a reluctant one. He understood why she wanted to move, of course, and he says he understands why she didn't want to leave Northern Ireland. But still, he mentions Emma's perfect life outside of Melbourne. How she has a pool in her garden, and how they could have that too for their children. All they have here are a series of puddles and potholes pitted around their muddy yard. She feels incredibly guilty that she has stood her ground on this when she knows he longs for that completely fresh new start. So she feels even more intense pressure to not complain about the mess, or the noise, or the prospect of living in a mobile home for up to 6 months while the work carries on around them. He's asleep now, but stirs in the bed beside her, rolling onto his side so that he faces her. Mel has seen that face every morning for the last 10 years, and she loves it. She loves him. Even when his face is slack and creased with sleep, and his mouth hangs open, he is still the most beautiful man she knows. She can't help but wonder what she has done to deserve him, this man who has told her time and time again that things will be okay. They will be happy again. The baby kicks, as if to remind her not to give in to the feelings of sadness that so often threaten to overcome her. Putting her hand to her tummy, Mel revels in the undulations of her skin as her unborn child stretches and wriggles. It's impossible to tell whether it's a hand or a foot, an elbow or a knee that prods forward, brushing under her skin. Not that it matters. The movement itself is reassurance enough, she thinks. He is here. He is moving. All is well and all will be well. She reminds herself that she has no real reason to doubt herself. There is nothing about this that is the same as her last awful experience of birth. Just like this new house, this new baby, her beautiful baby boy, will mark a fresh chapter for them all. There will still be challenges, but they can overcome challenges. Rubbing her swollen stomach once more, she feels the baby shift inside her, thrusting an unknown limb towards her bladder. She has no choice now but to get up and make her way to the grimmest WC known to mankind. Just a loo in a room no bigger than a cupboard, with not even a sink to wash her hands. It is dank and smells of too strong disinfectant. Mel takes a deep breath and tries not to think about what horrors the smell is masking or how much bleach the cleaners had to use. This loo will be ripped out, along with the wall dividing it from the small, dank and mouldy-smelling bathroom. They have plans to make one large family space with a roll-top bath, rainfall shower and underfloor heating. The cracked linoleum that feels just a little sticky under her feet will be a thing of the past too. Thankfully. Now, fully awake, Mel waddles back to the bedroom and grabs her oversized cardigan and slippers, compelled to go downstairs by a sudden need for some toast and her one permitted cup of coffee of the day. But first, she peeks into Tilly's room. Even though this room is unfamiliar and rough around the edges, her fiercely independent little girl has insisted on sleeping there until the mobile home arrives. "I'm a big girl, Mummy," she'd said when bedtime came around on their first night in the house. "I want to sleep in my own big bed." Having just turned 4 years old, Mel had wanted to tell Tilly it was okay to be a little girl for a while longer. Life's less complicated when you're 4. She'd wanted to pull her daughter into bed with her and Ed so she could be sure to keep her safe and warm. There is a comfort in being able to reach her hand out to her at a moment's notice and find her daughter easily. But Tilly has, as Mel has learned, inherited her mother's stubborn streak. She is infused with the belief that she is always right. As Ed says, karma's a 4-year-old with an attitude. Tilly is sound asleep, a mass of skinny limbs and wild curls. Her duvet has long since been kicked off and a pyjama top has ridden up to show off her tummy. Asleep, she still looks so baby-like. Mel feels her heart contract. She has heard 1,000 times that when a second child is born, the heart just expands to grow more love for them both. She has seen that expansion of love countless times, seen precious firstborns blossom into proud big brothers and sisters without losing so much as an ounce of love their mothers feel for them. But still, Mel is nervous. Her new baby is already so precious to her, even more so after the events of the last year, but here and now, Tilly is her world. Mel takes in her daughter's soft, long lashes and how they rest on her rosy cheeks, and remembers how Tilly kept her going when everything was falling apart just by being her wonderful, beautiful self. Tilly sighs in her sleep and rolls onto her side. Mel resists the urge to reach out and stroke her cheek. The pull of an undisturbed cup of coffee is too strong to risk a sleepy, grumpy child getting in on the action. The baby kicks again, as if demanding a much-needed caffeine injection, and Mel smiles. Of course she will be able to love them both. She'd do anything, endure anything, just to keep them happy and safe. And God help anyone who would try and get in her way. Chapter 2. The kitchen hums with the buzz of wiring in its terminal phase. The occasional rattle of Mel and Ed's old fridge as it protests being moved to a new home adds a percussive rhythm to the otherwise silent house. Mel revels in the quiet. In a few hours she will be wishing for it as the builders set to work and Tilly asks her endless questions. From the kitchen window, Mel can see Benavana rise up to the sky in the distance. She knows there's a statue at the top of the mountain, facing out over the Atlantic, of Manannán mac Lir, the Celtic sea god. His hands raised towards the water as if commanding it. If only life were that simple, Mel thinks, as the sound of the bubbling kettle joins in the gentle buzz and rattle in the room. She spoons some coffee into her mug and wonders if it would be a blessing or a curse to be able to command all in the natural world to bend to her will. So much heartache could have been prevented, she thinks, feeling the familiar pull of guilt and sorrow on her heart. The kettle clicks off, jolting Mel from the flashes of memories that haunt her from those days, and she's grateful for it. It's time to focus on the future, she mutters to herself, parroting what her mother told her as they hugged at the door of Mel and Ed's old house just over a fortnight ago, before closing it for the last time. As she starts to pour milk into her coffee, Mel questions whether or not there is a slightly sour smell coming off it. She eyes the rattling fridge before opening the door to an absence of a rush of cool air from it. It's not quite warm, but it's definitely not fridge-level cold. This is only confirmed when she opens the freezer door to see soggy boxes indicating thawed-out contents. Fuck, she swears, and sniffs her coffee again. She can't be sure, but she doesn't dare taste it. She'll have to go to the shops and get more. At least there is a fridge fitted in the caravan already. She won't have to go to the expense of buying a new one. Her back aching, she sits down at the battered wooden table the previous owners of Braeside Cottage left behind and grabs her to-do list and a pen. This pregnancy is making her increasingly forgetful, and she finds she's having to write even the simplest of tasks down lest she forget them. Reading down her to-do list, to distract herself from her thoughts, she circles "Call midwife" in red pen twice. That's one thing she needs to do urgently. She should have done it 2 weeks ago, but she has been so tired and so busy she hasn't quite got round to it. Or at least, that's what she tells herself. The truth being more that she dreads the inevitable conversation that she will have at her first visit with them. She knows, though, that she can't put this off any longer. She needs to be checked over and get registered under a consultant at the local hospital. This will be a hospital birth. She's taking no chances, even though she once had dreams of a beautiful water birth at home. She'd imagined feeling at ease in her own surroundings and managing her labour using her beloved hypnobirthing techniques. But that was before she truly understood just how wrong it could all go. Both she and Ed had agreed they are taking no chances this time. Mel is scrolling through her phone to find the health centre number when a loud rap on the door breaks through the peace and quiet, making her jump in fright. "Jesus, Mary and St. Joseph!" she swears, her hand curling in front of her chest as her heart thuds in fright. She can see a shadow through the glass panel of the front door, and quickly she assesses its size and shape, unable to remember the last time she opened her front door without feeling scared. There had been all sorts of visitors and all kinds of deliveries to her old house this past year. Her door splattered in paint. A woman in her 60s screaming at her, calling her a baby killer. Eggs flung at her windows. Once there was a delivery of a box containing what looked and smelled very much like human excrement. Her chest tight, Mel hopes Ed will have heard and will already be on his way to answer the thump, thump, thump. The banging on the door is repeated. The palms of Mel's hands are clammy as she covers her ears to try and block out the noise and to settle herself. It's probably the builders, she tells herself, trying to switch her brain back into rational thinking mode. It could be the postman or any number of deliveries of materials they need for the renovation. The most logical explanation is usually the correct one, she reminds herself, running through the script her therapist taught her to use in situations just like this. I do not have to be scared all the time. I do not need to be scared now. We are safe, she tells herself, remembering that very few people know where she has moved. The chances of this being someone with malicious intent are slim. The shadow at the door does not look familiar. It does not look like Alice, she rationalises, although even thinking of Alice's name makes her stomach tighten and threaten to turn. There's no sound from upstairs, no sign that Ed is coming to her rescue, and the shadow isn't moving. Telling herself to be brave, Mel pulls her cardigan tight and makes her way towards the door. She does not want to let the fear win. Not here, and not now. She knows if she gives into it and stays hidden, it will only grow bigger and threaten to fell her and her new start before it has even properly begun. The sound of feet shuffling on the gravel outside sets her entire nervous system on edge, but she is determined not to be defeated by her fears. Offering up a silent prayer to the universe for everything to be okay, she presses her cheek against the cracked gloss paint of the door beside the Yale lock and peers through the cloudy, grubby peephole. The person outside is not anyone she knows, and she doesn't look threatening. Not that it's always easy, Mel has learned, to tell who is nice and who is downright nasty from first appearances. The fresh chill of a spring morning sneaks in as Mel pulls the door open, and she can't help shivering, even though the sun is bright and casting dappled shards of light through the trees and onto the gravel driveway to their house. It's hard to know if the shivers are down to the cool air or her nerves. The woman in front of her, whom she'd put at in her late 60s or early 70s, is standing with a tight, nervous smile on her face and a well-worn biscuit tin in her hands. It's the same type Mel used to take to school on home economics days for cooking lessons. Seeing it conjures a memory of scones like rocks and banana bread that was so horrible not even the dog would eat it. Not that her baking has improved much in the intervening years. The older woman is wearing a pair of knee-high green welly boots that are muddy in a way only very well-loved and much-worn wellies can be. A long green padded coat, peppered with the occasional mud splatters near the hem, and a red beanie hat hide most of her distinguishing features. A few wisps of ash blonde, or it could be grey, hair escape from under the hat and frame her ruddy cheeks. She has the look of someone very much outdoorsy, her skin weathered by the sun, but her wrinkles minimised thanks to the plumpness of her features. "Sheila," she says, in an authoritative voice. "Sheila Quigg, from up the road." She gestures with a quick nod of her head behind her, which is so commanding that Mel finds herself looking to see if there's a house noticeably close by that she just hasn't noticed before. "You won't see it from here," Sheila says, moving her head to try and peek into the hall. Mel moves slightly to block her view. "It's just over a mile back there," Sheila continues, unfazed and without missing a beat. "Up to the left, past the shock. Not a bad walk on a day like today all the same," she adds, before her gaze comes to rest on Mel's swollen stomach. She gives a small, curt nod of acknowledgement. Sheila stares expectantly at Mel, waiting for her to speak, but Mel suddenly feels as if she has lost the ability to make polite conversation. She's controlling her nerves, but only just. No amount of rationalising can change the fact she does not know this woman and has no idea what her intentions are. A voice in her head tells her she should introduce herself like a normal human being would, while another screams that she should still be careful not to give away too much information. "I'm your nearest neighbour," Sheila says, breaking the now awkward silence. "I've seen all the comings and goings and decided I'd come down and introduce myself. It's always good to know whom you're living alongside. It can get lonely enough out here." "I'm Mel," Mel says, her voice a little strained. "I'm here with my husband and my wee girl." "And another on the way, I see," Sheila says, her gaze falling once again to Mel's stomach. "You'll have your hands full," she says. "Are you from round here? Your accent doesn't sound like it." "I'm from Northern Ireland, yes," Mel says, still guarded. "But we're new to this area. We loved the house, so—" "And you'll be living here yourselves? You're not just some fly-by-nights making it into a glamping spot or something? Because the last thing we want is more people flying along these roads in their cars, driving like they're Lewis Hamilton or the like. You'll understand that, with your wee girl and everything." Her voice is light, but it's clear that she is very serious. "No plans outside of making it our forever home," Mel says with a tight smile, thinking this woman should be working for the police, wheedling information out of people. "I'm sure you'll have seen the builders' vans and the like if you've been watching all the comings and goings." "Builders? Yes, I've seen some vans. So it's more than a lick of paint and new curtains you'll be going for then." She takes a step back and surveys the exterior of the house as if she's bidding for the contract herself. "Yes," Mel says. "It is, but we're going to try and make the most of the original features and make it in keeping, on the exterior at least, with how it looked in its heyday. We'll be putting a small extension in too, to the rear, and—" She stops herself because she doesn't want to let Sheila or anyone in. She doesn't want to find herself in a place where she feels compelled to share her story. She hasn't moved here to make friends, not now that her trust in people has been irrevocably damaged. No, she just wants to live a quiet life with her little family and keep to herself as much as possible. "I'm sure it will be lovely when it's done," Sheila says, and she thrusts the tin in Mel's direction. "Shortbread. Homemade this morning. Probably still warm if you get to them quickly. Perfect with a cup of tea." Mel knows she should probably invite Sheila in for tea. The woman has traipsed over a mile to bring her new neighbours fresh baked goods, so it would probably be mannerly. But she really doesn't want anyone in the house who doesn't absolutely have to be there. When she remembers that she is out of milk, she sags with relief. She has a proper excuse for not welcoming guests. I'd invite you in, but to be honest, the place is completely upside down and we've not a drop of milk. I was actually just about to get ready to head out to the shop. Sheila lets out a loud humph of disapproval, then tries to cover it with a cough. Sorry, excuse me, these damp mornings. She thrusts her biscuit tin at Mel again, a final hint to take it from her. But yes, of course I remember what it's like when you move house and everything is at 6s and 7s. But there's never any excuse to run out of milk, not when you have a wee one in the house. Mel colours at the implied judgment. Her skin prickles. Does Sheila think she's a bad mother because she's out of milk? She's about to launch into a long-winded explanation about the broken fridge when she remembers her therapist also telling her she is not obliged to spill her life story to every person who looks in her direction. She takes a deep breath. It would be lovely to have you over when we have the place sorted out a bit. She knows it will be months before the build and renovation will be complete. I look forward to it, Sheila replies with a tight smile. And remember, we're just up the road. That's me and my husband, Barney. Just the two of us now the wains have grown and gone their own way. Not a one of them interested in farming. But sure, what can you do? So remember, about a mile up the road, past the shock. That's us, if you need anything. And if the dog starts barking at you, just tell her to quiet down. Her name's Doris. She turns to leave. Hang on, Mel calls. Let me give you your tin back at least. It's not so much a kindness as a case of not wanting to give her a reason to come back. Ah, go away with that, Sheila says. It's only an old tin. I've plenty of them. She gives a courteous smile, nods and turns away again to start down the gravelled drive towards the gate, with the gait of a woman well used to walking country roads and fields in all weathers. The wave of guilt washes over Mel. Sheila, she calls, would you like a lift back? Figure it's the least I can do. Not at all, Sheila says with a stoic smile. Sure, the walk will do me good. That fresh country air works wonders, you know. And sure you've enough to do getting to the shop and getting milk in. With that, Sheila is gone, and Mel is left, biscuit tin in hand, her back nipping just a little, and worried that she might just have made an enemy. Another one. Chapter 3. Even though Sheila has left and the house is quiet again, Mel still feels unsettled. She tries to tell herself that's perfectly understandable given everything she has been through and that it will, in time, pass. She just has to have faith in herself, she thinks, as she has a quick scout around the kitchen to see if there is anything else she should get at the shop. More tea bags for one. The builders go through them at a rate of knots. And a few more packets of biscuits. As usual, she'll just set everything out in the kitchen and they can help themselves to tea and coffee whenever they want. There's no way she has the energy to be making tea for them all day. Not at almost 34 weeks pregnant. The sound of footsteps, unmistakably Ed's, on the stairs is a relief. She feels at ease when he is around. He smiles at her as he walks into the kitchen, dressed in a t-shirt and joggers, his hair still messy. Morning, love, he says. Who was at the door? I heard you talking to someone. He walks to the fridge and opens it, his brow wrinkling when he can't see any milk. There's no milk, Mel tells him. The fridge is on the blink and the milk was definitely smelling a bit ripe this morning. I'm going to nip out to the shop. I had a feeling the fridge was in its death throes last night, but I was really hoping we'd get another few weeks out of it, he says with a grimace. Let me get my trainers on and I'll go. Save you the effort. Mel smiles, grateful for the offer. She's at the stage of her pregnancy where fitting behind a steering wheel has become a bit of a challenge. Thanks, she says. Is herself still asleep up there? Mel nods towards the ceiling. By some miracle, yes, Ed grins. I figure let her sleep as long as she wants. There's enough chaos down here as it is. So, who was at the door? He asks again, before spotting the biscuit tin on the table. He wastes no time in opening it, and the smell of freshly baked shortbread permeates the air. "Is this something to do with our mystery visitor?" "It is. We had a visit from a neighbour. I think she was a recon mission to find out as much about us as possible." "I didn't think we had any neighbours," Ed says, lifting one of the perfectly golden biscuits out and taking a large, crumbly bite. He says. "These are amazing. Maybe we should make friends with her so she'll share the recipe." "She said she's our nearest neighbour. Lives about a mile away, past the shuck, whatever a shuck is. Her name's Sheila. I can't remember what she said her husband was called. Harry or Barry or something. She definitely seemed like the kind of woman who enjoys a bit of gossip." "What's a shuck, Daddy?" a little voice, still croaky with sleep, asks, and both Ed and Mel turn to see their daughter walk into the room, dressed in her pyjamas and with her slippers on the wrong feet. "Well, I think it's like a tiny wee stream that runs between fields," Ed replies, while Mel guides her daughter to a chair and changes her slippers over to the correct feet without saying a word. "Can you catch fish in a shuck?" Tilly asks. "I wouldn't think so," Ed tells her. "They're usually very small." Tilly seems pleased with this answer and turns her attention to asking for her breakfast instead. "Daddy is going to the shop to get milk and you can have your cereal then," Mel tells her. "Or I can make you some toast now." "With Nutella?" Tilly asks, immediately brightening. It's not something Mel would normally offer for breakfast, unless it was a special day like a birthday or Christmas, but she figures it can't hurt to break her own rule occasionally. "As a treat," Mel tells her, "just this once, and I'll pour you some juice." Meanwhile, Ed is sat down and is slipping his feet into the trainers he abandoned in the kitchen yesterday. "I suppose we have to expect the odd nosy neighbour. Country folk like to know who are around them, and I don't think it's a bad thing to get to know the people living closest to us. There will be times you'll be here on your own with the babies." Mel stiffens, her anxiety breaking through the surface again. She doesn't want to think about being alone without him close by, even though she knows that with the nature of his job, he can be anywhere in the country working on a build. "I'm not a baby," Tilly interrupts, indignant. Mel can understand. They've been preparing her for months that there is a new tiny baby on the way and she will be the best big girl in the world. "Of course not. Sorry, pet," Ed soothes, before returning his attention to his wife. "There might be times you will be grateful to have someone on hand if you need them." Mel's not convinced. "She doesn't have to be your best friend," he continues, and Mel feels herself tense up more. Even after everything that has happened, she still finds herself missing the last woman she'd considered a best friend. If this is going to be our forever home, then we need to focus on the positive. He stands up and slides a hand around his wife's waist and pulls her into a gentle sideways hug. "Isn't that what we've been saying? Things will be good from now on. We have this house. It's going to be the best home for us. This is our new start, that, and our new baby. And before you say it, yes, I know that's scary too, but everything is going to be okay. We're going to be okay. We're safe. Our baby is safe." Mel nods, aware that Ed doesn't like it when she starts to spiral. She worries that, as wonderful as he is losing patience with her and still smarting from her refusal to emigrate. In return, she feels she has to keep her end of the bargain and work on her anxiety and believing that things are on the up. She takes a deep breath, trying to inhale some of that fresh country air wafting in from the open back door. "You're right," she says, with a smile she doesn't quite feel. "Can I have a biscuit, Mummy?" Tilly asks, standing up on her tiptoes, her eyes fixed on Sheila's biscuit tin. "They smell delicious," she says, emphasising each of the 3 syllables. Immediately Mel wants to say no. They don't know Sheila Quigg. They've never so much as set eyes on her before today. There could be anything in those cookies. Anything at all. And they don't even know for certain she actually is their neighbour. No, she chides herself. She's being ridiculous. But still, she doesn't want Tilly to eat something prepared by a stranger who has just landed at their front door. Of course you can, Ed tells his daughter, just as Mel opens her mouth to speak. He glances towards her and she can read the look on his face. It's only a biscuit. You have to stop worrying. She wants to scream at him that it's impossible not to worry. Hasn't the last year proven to them how fragile life is and how brutal people can be? But she hears his voice in her head again. You will drive yourself and the rest of us mad if you don't start to move on and stop worrying about every little thing and every person we meet. She hears that voice and she can picture his expression. Tired, exasperated, and close to breaking point. This move isn't just a new start. It's a Hail Mary for a marriage battered by the losses of the last year. Mel bites her tongue and holds her breath as Tilly reaches into the tin and extracts one of the sugar-dusted treats. She holds back the tears that threaten to fall, hears her therapist's voice in her head reminding her to think logically. It's a cookie. It's just a cookie. Ed took a bite, she tells herself. He took a bite and he is fine. Sheila Quigg is not the wicked witch come down from some castle with a baked goods equivalent of a shiny red apple to feed Mel and her child in a bid to send them into a dreamless sleep. Pulling a chair out, Mel sits down, afraid that her wobbling legs will give out altogether if she doesn't. She hates what her life has become, even with this new house in this beautiful part of the world, and she can't seem to steer herself back to shore, no matter how hard she tries. Her therapist tells her to give herself some grace, an expression that has started to set her teeth on edge. She doesn't want to give herself any grace. She wants the whole world to leave her alone. She was not responsible for that beautiful baby's death. She'd just done what she always did, tried to help to the very best of her ability. That had been all she had ever wanted to do. Chapter 4. Looking back, there was nothing much to differentiate Alice Monroe from any of the other women who had approached Mel to hire her as a doula. As a first-time mother, Alice wanted to keep things as natural as possible when it came to giving birth. That in itself was nothing unusual. The very nature of Mel's business meant that the vast majority of mothers-to-be who contacted her were keen to have medication-free births and were looking for alternative methods to support them during labour and delivery. Some were just looking to find out more about the hypnobirthing classes she offered and were eager to learn how they could work with their bodies to have a positive birth experience. Mel encountered more than one or two cynics along the way, of course. Her own mother had fitted into the category neatly, at least at first. Mel, are you really trying to make me believe that if a woman just tells herself it doesn't hurt, then it doesn't hurt? That sounds insane, she had said when her daughter had sat down across the kitchen table from her and attempted to justify the massive career change she was about to embark on. Shaking her head in frustration, Mel had tried to explain to her mother, once again, how the practice of hypnobirthing could help reduce stress.